Trauma Therapist Podcast, episode 433. All right, guys, welcome to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. My name is Guy McPherson. My mission is to raise awareness of trauma and to support new trauma therapists just starting out on their trauma-informed journey. I do that through this podcast and my membership community, Trauma Therapist 2.0. If you're a therapist of any kind, interested in learning about trauma, and you're looking for support and inspiration, I invite you to check out Trauma Therapist 2.0 by going to traumatherapist2.com. That's traumatherapist, the number 2.com. All right, let's get started. All right, guys, I want to welcome back Talkspace as a sponsor to the podcast. You know, we all have something we want to change about ourselves, whether it's spending too much time on social media or wanting to start a new hobby. But if you're like me, like most people, taking action can feel almost impossible without the right support. Talkspace Online Therapy is the most convenient and affordable way to make lasting change in your life with the support of a licensed therapist. Send your licensed therapist text, audio, picture, or video messages from your phone or computer whenever you need to, even if it's on the way to work. You don't have to make appointments or deal with extra commutes. Everything happens within Talkspace's secure platform, all on your schedule. Talkspace matches you with a licensed therapist based on your needs and preferences. They have thousands of licensed therapists trained in over 40 specialties. So if you have something very specific you want to work on, they will find someone right for you. Once you're matched, you can begin therapy that very same day. The bottom line is that life can be hard, and Talkspace wants to make sure more of us get the support we need at a price we can afford. As a listener of this podcast, you can get $100 off your first month on Talkspace. To match with your perfect therapist, go to Talkspace.com or download the app. Make sure to use the code TRAUMATHERAPIST to get $100 off your first month and show your support for this podcast. Once again, go to Talkspace.com and use the code TRAUMATHERAPIST. This episode is sponsored by Somatic Experiencing. Trauma may be a fact of life, but it doesn't have to be a life sentence. Somatic Experiencing is a psychobiological method of addressing clients' physical and emotional trauma conditions and helps to give voice to their experiences without a need for them to retell their story. SE focuses on regulation of the nervous system and offers the opportunity to engage, complete, and resolve the body's instinctual responses to traumatic experiences. For more information regarding Somatic Experiencing and the SE Professional Training Program, the Trauma Therapist Podcast listeners can visit traumahealing.org/TTP. That's traumahealing.org/TTP. All right, guys, welcome back to the Trauma Therapist Podcast. I am very excited to have as my guest today, Jeannette Dijkstra. Jeannette, welcome.
Thank you, Guy. Thank you so much for having me. I'm very thrilled. Yeah.
Awesome. All right. I'm very excited you're here. So at the age of 12 years old, Jeannette was raped at a campsite. A life ruled by this trauma lay ahead. Jeannette managed to grow up. She had a good job in an OR in an academic hospital. At the age of 40, she began her training as a therapist with a transpersonal specialization. More and more, her own traumatic experience became important for her, but no therapist could ever help her. Often now her clients are victims of sexual abuse, and Jeannette continues to search for good trauma training. Recently, she was very lucky to find a good teacher and finish her study as a trauma sexologist. All right, Jeannette, again, thank you so much. Before we move on here, and I'll let you add to that if you want, but share with our listeners where you're from originally and where you're calling from now.
Well, I'm from Holland. I was born and raised in Holland, and I still live there. And for this moment, for like 8 years, I live in Amsterdam, so the capital. Yeah.
Okay. So, again, thank you so much for being here. I really appreciated. I know it took us a lot to finally get this in the calendar,
yes.
But
yes.
Again, I wanted to thank you so much for doing this. So let's start off. I know you have a quote.
Yes. Yeah.
Why don't you give that to us?
Yeah, my quote was, you have to know it before you can see it. And that illustrates the damage done by the trauma of sexual abuse. You can live with it for so many years, and you even don't know the problems you meet in life is caused by that trauma. So when I start to study as a therapist, then later on I study to become a trauma sexologist, which is a new profession here in Holland, and we are the pioneers. And then I learned so much about the damage and the consequences of the damage of sexual abuse. And then I start to discover that it is everywhere in every aspect of your life, socially, physical, psychological. And then you start to see it everywhere, also with your clients and with other people. It is widespread, profound damage. So
let me just get clear on one thing. So a trauma sexologist, is that someone who studies trauma that as a result of sexual abuse?
Yeah.
Okay.
You can say that. You can say that because it's not a common trauma as we might think. What is a trauma? This has to do with it is a sexual attractive trauma, and that is kind of a devilish connection because you have the lust is mixed with the disgust, and it is how can you say it? It makes it a sexual attractive trauma. That is the devilish connection, how so to speak. Yeah, that makes it different than a normal trauma. And as a therapist, you should know that because the damage. So if you talk about trauma sexology, if you are a trauma sexual, there are a lot of diagnoses you can arrive at that. So you have narcissism, borderline, you have eating disorders, aggression disorders, what was it? PTSS. Well, it's a sexual PTSS. And it is never a perfect fit. So as a therapist, you should always want to ask about if there is any sexual abuse in the history, because sometimes you treat someone for addiction, but then if there was sexual abuse, you don't come to the root of the trauma. You know,
Let me before we get there, Jeannette, I want to ask about your story, if we can. And obviously, I don't
of course.
want to. You don't have to talk about anything you don't want to, but obviously you shared some things in your bio. So you had this experience at 12 years old. You went on with your life. So how did things start to happen? How did this trauma kind of manifest itself in your life? And you got to a point where you're like, oh my God, this happened, or?
Well, for instance, it is important that you know that the perpetrator is internalized. When you have been sexually abused, the perpetrator, you have always triangular relationships. The perpetrator is always there, looking over your shoulder. What I discovered, I was alienated from my family because secretly you become to belong to the family of the perpetrator. So I could not tell anyone in my family. I lived in a secret. And then the relationships I got along the way, it was always triangular. I know now looking back, but it was impossible to really connect with someone else. And that we call like the active victimhood, which means that you start to relive the trauma time after time after time. And sometimes there is an addictive urge for the Sorry, I'm
No,
looking
take your time. That's
for
perfectly
English
fine.
words.
Yeah.
Well, it actually, the active victimhood is the expression of the trauma, but I could see it looking backwards that I always choose relationships who, in one way or another, make the scene again of the trauma.
Oh, wow.
So you get the scene back, but not the power. And then you live a kind of half-hearted life. You don't
So
really know what.
so how old are we talking about now when
Well,
you're
this
going
is
through
like
this?
the incubation time. It is the interval. We call it the interval. Is I put the rape. I put it away, deep. I told myself to forget it, and then at a certain point in life, I think it was my middle son. He stood in front of me. He was like 9 years old, I think. I don't know exactly the age. And then it came back to me full.
Wow.
I remembered, I know, oh, that was it. And then you start a period of half denial. So I lived with that for almost 40 years.
Okay,
And
so you lived with this for 40 years.
Yeah.
Were you at that time, during that time, were you in therapy? Were you?
Yeah.
Was it?
I had a lot of difficulties to overcome in life, and I was looking for therapists. And I've seen several. I did some trainings or like development trainings, but no one knew what was wrong with me, and no one asked about sexual abuse. No one.
No.
And later on, when it came into fully awareness, then I told therapists, or I wrote it down in my application, and nothing. So this is my passion, and this is my drive to spread it, to spread the word, to tell my story and to tell what I have learned about that. So no other young man or women has to suffer so long,
Right.
actually.
So why do you think a lot of, or all the therapists just didn't ask you about it? Is it the culture there? I mean, even here, that still happens, but it's becoming more and more.
Yeah, it is still nowadays. It's getting better, but we call it the collective no. It is like the victims themselves, but everybody around them. We have a tendency to look back. We don't want to face it because sometimes the story it's too bad to believe, and that's also for caretakers. They forget to ask girls who have been abused and if there was any pregnancy, because that is so gross, and so you have to deal with the disgust about that. But it's so important. I wished someone would have asked me the question, but not that there was any pregnancy in my situation, luckily not, but it happens often.
Right.
But we have a tendency not even to think about that because the truth is too hard to deal with. I think that's one reason. Yeah.
So you shared the story of your middle son who was like 9 standing before you, and at that point it came back.
Yeah.
How did things unfold for you in terms of your awareness of what had happened?
Well, of course, all the time I knew it. It was there, but I pushed it away so much. But then it came, all the details I remembered. I looked for a friend that time. I was with her at the camping site as children. And she lived in the village where I moved to. So I met her that time for the first time after so many years. So probably that was a trigger too, to start to remember. I talked about it with her, and I start to talk with my husband that time, the father of my children. And then it was a state of half denial. That's what they call yeah, you say, yeah, well, at least that was I did. Yeah, I was raped, but I don't have any problem. I'm healthy. It's not a problem. But of course, I was afraid to be like a victim. I wanted to be like strong, and yeah. So, but that can be different for
Right.
anybody. Especially men have also difficulty admitting they have been a victim, because it's damaging for their manhood.
Right.
So yeah, that was a half denial time. Yeah.
How did it get to the point where you said, you know what, I want to study trauma. I want to help other people. Talk to us about that.
Well, I did this therapist education, and then I started to work with clients, and first during the education, later on myself, and a lot of times I had people in my therapist room, so to speak, and they had a lot of times there was sexual abuse coming with them. So I start to wonder what is this? And of course I knew about my own experience that time. And then I started to search for a good education, and I came across Peter John Schouten. He's my teacher, and he wrote also the book Trauma Sexuality. And I learned a lot from him. And then I start to study his book, and it was one-on-one my story. And every time that happened again, people who read his book, and by this time there are many people who read it, everybody is telling the same story. This is my story. This seems to be how it works.
Just to remind everyone, I'm speaking with Jeannette Dijkstra. The book we're talking about, your kind of go-to book recommendation that we're talking about is Trauma Sexuality, Men Abused as Boys, Men Between Victim and Perpetrator by Peter John Schouten. And I'll have that linked up at the show notes page.
Yeah, and it says he's writing about men and boys, but there are a lot of women who embrace the book as well, because the internal damage, and it's the same for men and women, actually.
So did you eventually find a therapist? How did your own therapy and healing unfold? What does that look like for you?
Well, that was when I met Peter John Schouten. He and his wife, they are pioneers in this field of trauma work. And when I did the education, the schooling, your own process is there as well. You cannot come without it. So I did a lot of trauma work there. And the way he's working is through psychodrama. So that method, you display your inner world through drama. So it's a fantastic tool for this work. Even like I heard Bessel van der Kolk, you probably know him. After so many years, he finally said he discovered this way of working. And my teacher, he's working this psychodrama for almost 30 years.
Oh, wow.
And what he discovered, it's through 30 years of empirical investigation, actually. Yeah. So that is, I did my work there with him and during the schooling.
So I want to kind of want to reference your material you sent me, because I asked you some questions and you kind of got back to me. You wrote them down. First of all, I want to say I really appreciate you coming on here, because I know you were a little hesitant about your English, which, by the way, is awesome. I mean,
thank you.
Yeah, you're doing a great job.
Thank you.
So one of the questions I had asked was about advice, to therapists who are just starting out, maybe learning about trauma, or even therapists with some experience who don't really know that much about trauma.
Yeah.
What would you say? What would you
Well,
share?
one thing I should explain actually is what we discovered is the lost second, and this lost second is a kind of what happens in the first moment of the trauma. You have the shock, you have the sex, you are torn from childhood, then you have the secret and the helplessness. Well, that happens in 1 second, and then you have the inner division. You make a split inside of you as through what happens in the moment, and that is that 1 second. Let me look up. It has concentrated content which is too heavy to exist in reality, so it becomes timeless, and it's a kind of desensitized lump somewhere inside of you, and every victim has this lost second. So what therapists usually want to do nowadays is EMDR and tell you it's past, and we go away from it, we go further, then you can look at it like this. But you cannot, it is unfinished business, so it's unprocessed. So what you should do, you should go with your client, you stand next to your client and go to the moment, make this moment, get it back into reality, unravel it, what happened there, what you feel, face what happened there. Sometimes you have to do it in small steps, but it has to be done. You have to go to this 1 second to get there, what you have lost in the trauma.
So you're talking about kind of an exposure or reliving the trauma in a sense.
No, it is not exposure. No, it is, you have to drag up yourself from the depth with a very reliable person who stands next to you. So it's not that you have to, it's not kind of exposure therapy. No, that can be re-traumatizing. It is like you have this second, like what we discovered, this second appears to be timeless. What so is important, something what is timeless can never be behind you. So you have to bring this timeless lump, you must give it meaning, you give it feelings, and you bring it back into reality. And then when it's in the world, so you speak also about the trauma, so you open the secret too. And when it's in the world, then you are going to do the work. Then you can work to leave it behind you. Then you have to get rid of the internalized perpetrator. We have all kinds of models for that and ways to do it. So that is actually, that was one advice. So that makes sense to me. I guess I just need a little more clarity on, you're saying when you kind of bring it back up, you're working with a guide in a sense, a therapist, an experienced person. And we don't treat, we give guidance.
Right. Okay. So what specifically, or how specifically is that lost second being brought up again? Are they talking about it?
Yes, of course. But we are also, when you work with the psychodrama, you can put models on the floor with chairs.
Right.
And then you have this basic model is like, this is the adult who became an adapter due to the trauma. Right behind the adult, the adapter, is the perpetrator, the internalized perpetrator. Then you have two small chairs. That's the division. That is the authentical child and the frozen child. And then I have my second advice. As a therapist, you should know that you cannot work with the adapter, because the adapter adapts and he's doing everything what you want. So you have to find the perpetrator's voice. But you can work throughout these models, and you add a witness, and the internal witness is the victim him or herself, who has to look at the damage. So then you step by step, and then you have an external witness. That was the missing one who wasn't there in the abuse. So you can add it to make new experiences, actually. So, and then step by step, you find back your trauma.
Right. You're talking about psychodrama.
Yes. Maybe it's a little bit too technical, or
no, not at all. I was just wanting to get clear on what exactly you were talking about. And I've had a number of guests on here talking about psychodrama. But yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I mean, I think for you to have gone through that experience and for all that time, like you said, to repress it and to be, I mean, my God, I mean, I'm sure a lot of people experience that.
Yeah, it's horrible. It's horrible. And it's unnecessary.
Jeannette, and go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, because if you are a therapist and maybe you are afraid to ask the question because you think, if the answer is yes, what then? Right. Well, then nothing. If the answer is yes, then you are, as a therapist, you are the witness. And your client is just breaking open the secret. That is a huge, good step to start with. So don't be afraid to ask the question. And if there was no sexual abuse, then you won't harm the client, because if the answer is no, there was no abuse, then okay. And if there was, and the client says no, then even someone asked the question. So maybe at a little time later or a year later, this client comes back and tells you, you asked me the question, I said no, but it was yes. And that is small effort, but tremendous result can be. It can be have a good result to ask the question. So don't hesitate as a therapist, and just be there for your client.
In what kind of capacity are you working now? Are you working at a clinic? Are you working at a hospital? Or what are you doing specifically now?
Well, we have a growing group of trauma sexologists, and we are working together in a network. We are all having private practice, and now I work with one of my colleagues. We have groups too, and a lot of people, and me, sometimes I do it myself. We give information evenings. So we invite people, healthcare workers, family, friends of victims themselves, but everyone around them. And we give information, like I talk with you now. We tell the people, we answer questions, and we give demonstration with psychodrama, the basic model, the inner division, what I told you just, or we have also a very nice model is the 7 chairs of aggression, because you have a gap out of your natural aggression when you have sexual abuse in your history. So you can learn someone to have healthy aggression to protect yourself again, to learn to protect yourself again. So that's also the damage. You are not able anymore to protect yourself. So someone can easily go over your boundaries and you deliver yourself to someone else. And the trigger can be everywhere, at work, on the street, and in relationship, in friendship. It's very, very damaging. It is. Yeah. I just told you a little bit like this. Yeah.
Well, and I so appreciate it. I mean, I realize we don't have much time, and the podcast is short, but
yes, I know.
What's the best way for people to get in contact with you, Jeannette?
Well, I have a website, and maybe it is difficult in English. It's Praktijk Voelmoedig. But
okay, I have it here. I actually have it here. I'll link it up at the show notes page.
Okay.
And I didn't mean to cut you off, but I just want to make sure I have it here. We'll link it up.
Okay, that will be great.
And we'll also link up the book. What is that? Let me just find that book again. Trauma, Sexuality, Men Abused as Boys, Men Between Victim and Perpetrator by Peter John Shelton.
Yes,
Jeannette, thank you so much. I realize the time is a big difference here. And I'm so thankful that you came on here and shared your experience with a lot of courage, I'm sure. So
yeah, I was very happy to do so. And thank you very much for having me in your podcast.
All right. Take care.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Once again, thank you to Somatic Experiencing for sponsoring this podcast. Somatic Experiencing Trauma Institute is a 501c3 nonprofit dedicated to resolving trauma worldwide by providing professional training and education in somatic experiencing. It was founded by Dr. Peter Levine, author of the bestseller Waking the Tiger, who developed somatic experiencing based on explorations of how animals deal with threat, nervous system overwhelm, and traumatic experiences on a daily basis. Learn more about somatic experiencing and the SE professional training program at traumahealing.org/TTP. That's traumahealing.org/TTP. All right, guys, I want to welcome back Talkspace as a sponsor to this podcast. You know, when you're busy, like we all are, the first thing that falls to the bottom of the list usually tends to be taking care of yourself. I don't have time or money for that, people often tend to say. Many people think that therapy is just about analyzing dreams or digging into painful memories, both of which can be very powerful. We know that. But it's also a great tool for developing coping skills, dealing with stress, and getting the accountability you need to achieve your goals. The bottom line is that life can be hard, and Talkspace wants to make sure more of us get the support we need at a price we can afford. As a listener of this podcast, you get $100 off your first month on Talkspace. To match with your perfect therapist, go to Talkspace.com or download the app. Make sure to use the code TRAUMATHERAPIST to get $100 off your first month and show your support for this show. Once again, go to Talkspace.com and use the code TRAUMATHERAPIST.